That's me. I feel that I'm in complete profile to anyone sitting here. I'm going to edge a little bit more this way. You can see the whole room. There we go. Otherwise, I can't see everybody. Okay.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started here. I'm Tricia Schmidt with VT Industries, and we're really excited that everyone came out for today's event. We're going to go ahead and make some introductions, and also wanted to say some thank yous. VT has been in the home remodel category for almost 60 years, and we're really excited about everyone being here and for Hillary to be here today to enlighten us. We also have our product on display over there, so feel free to take a look after the event. First, I would like to thank Hillary Farr for coming today. We're really excited to have her here. She's the HGTV's Love It or List It host, but she also has done a lot more than that in her career. She was the first designer to stage properties for sale, and she's really perfected the art of ambiance in a room. Her understanding of home design and improvement business transforms spaces into usable areas that suit the needs and personalities of homeowners all over. She has proven to be a master of getting the most out of any kitchen and bath remodel, and we couldn't be more excited to have her here with VT today.
Thank you.
I would also like to introduce Nancy Banasic. She's with Noble, and she's going to moderate our discussion today. All the questions that you guys submitted, that's what the conversation today is based on, so feel free to write down on your cards on your table if you have any additional questions, and if we have time at the end of the discussion, Nancy will ask Hillary and Hillary will answer. So feel free to do that and just get them to someone from BT, and we'll see how much time we have. And then finally, I want to just thank all of you again for all your business over the years, and also just for being here today and joining us during your KBIS trip. We're really excited, and the enthusiasm about the event, we were just overwhelmed with how many people decided to join us, and we're really excited to hear from Hillary. And I'm going to turn it over to Nancy.
All right, so when you registered, we had all of you asked, what are your top questions to ask Hillary? So we've ranked all these top questions. We're going to start with that. And then as Tricia said, there's white note cards by those flowers on your table. So if you come up with other questions, feel free to write them down. You can wave your hand and somebody from BT will grab those. And if we have time, we'll certainly answer some of those questions. So Hillary, a lot of us have walked the KBIS show in the last 2 days, and we've seen some really interesting things. Can you tell us what you think the design trends for kitchens are for this year? What are the hot things?
Yes, absolutely. One of the things that I like that is happening is a very nice blend of contemporary and traditional. And one of the things that's happening is the introduction of the warmer metals into the kitchen. I don't know if you've noticed that with the plumbing that is available now, but we're seeing a lot of antique gold and brushed gold, brass. These are coming back in terms of giving us the lines that are modern, but a slight look back with an edge to the plumbing. And from that has followed neutrals. Very dark neutrals, black and white is huge, looking back to that sort of European kitchen idea. It's timeless, and it will work with almost everybody's decor, which is so important now with open concept really being the design of choice for most homes. So your kitchen is front and center, but it has to work in a way that you can change it up a little bit with accessories, and it will work as you also change up your own home decor. So the trend has been for darker neutrals and warmer metals, simpler backsplashes, but of course the countertops still rule as the big design statement.
What about any specific color? Any styles or color, like the Pantene color? Or?
Well, that orchid is not an easy color to work with. I mean, purple is tricky. And what I've seen happen a lot is taking the sense of the Pantone color and working more with blues that might have more of that mauve undertone. And it's a much easier color to work with, to live with, and to have a forward-looking update to your home and or your kitchen. But again, it's not going to become boring, and it's not making a statement that is so strong it's going to look passé within 2 years. It's going to look old and done. So it's take that sensibility and work it in. Excuse me, sorry.
So
Cheers, just water.
many of your customers out there obviously have seen stainless steel appliances, great cabinetry, I want a granite countertop, I want wonderful flooring, and I don't have that much money. So how do you guide your customers to live within a budget without going over but still achieve the look they want to achieve?
You know, it's difficult because the oversized stainless appliances have been the big statement pieces for a long, long time. And first of all, there's a massive cost. And secondly, most kitchens, honestly, cannot support these huge, huge appliances. So I start there. And then we talk about how to make our big design statement. And one of the easiest ways to do it is pretty much what I described earlier. Have a timeless, wonderful, neutral palette for your cabinetry. You can use a paint grade material, and if you choose an interesting color, it can look wonderful. You'll see me do that on the show a lot, where I'll just choose even a blue sometimes, or a gray. It gives it depth, it gives it interest, but it's still just paint grade. So you can save a lot of money there, put on great hardware, then choose your countertop and build from there. So that's, to me, where you should spend your money, because you've got a simple, elegant cabinetry, you've got a wow countertop, and then you choose your backsplash. And a backsplash is a relatively small amount of material, and that's a place where you can either bling it up, or you can go very simple if you're going with a slightly more embellished countertop. So this way you have kept down your costs tremendously. Maybe your backsplash is where you go all out, but the countertop is key, and build up from there. And you'll have a beautiful, timeless-looking kitchen that hasn't cost you a fortune. Granite and appliances are your two biggest costs in a kitchen.
So what, when you're flipping a home, what are the best finishes and styles to use? What have you found really works?
Well, again, you know, that depends on the style, aesthetic of the home. And most importantly, it has to strike the buyer as a functional space. I mean, when I flipped homes, a lot of the people who bought their first home from me have actually worked with me all the way through to their third, fourth, and fifth homes as their families expand. And so I've learned that when they walked into the initial house that they bought from me that I was flipping, they had decided to buy the house pretty much within 5 minutes. They've walked in, they've taken it in, but the kitchens and the bathrooms are what sealed the deal. So the kitchens, which is the big, I'd call it a swagger room. I mean, it really has become that. It's a way to show off. It's front and center again, as I say, with open concept, and even when it's not, it's usually part of the family area. It's a gathering spot. It's where the kids do the homework. It's where your friends hang out when you're cooking. It is an incredibly important room and always has been. That is where you have to think through a style that's going to work, that is going to appeal to pretty much everybody, depending on where your price point is. So what I find works, again, it doesn't change much. It is a great layout. Always put in a kitchen island if you can, because that has a huge wow factor, and it's so practical in terms of solving issues of cabinetry, storage, place to sit up, for all the obvious reasons. And I usually build my kitchen from the floor up. So if I want to have the floor flow through and I need to give a sense of space, I don't break the floor. I'll do hardwood all the way through, or tile, whatever it might be. And then I go on from there, again, often using paint grade, sometimes contrasting my base cabinets with my upper cabinets, which gives it a true custom design look, and really it's just choosing a different color paint. It's not a big deal. I often contrast my countertops as well, so my island doesn't have to match the rest of my countertop. Again, that gives it a true custom look. It's not going to break the bank. do a wonderful backsplash that is either going to contrast tremendously and pop those countertops, or it's going to, as seamlessly as possible, continue them. And then lighting. And if you can put all of those three things in play and keep your price point down, because if you go all out on that kitchen, you can have blown your budget so badly that then you have to pull back on all the other areas of that house you want to flip, and they will see that. The buyer will see that immediately if the quality isn't there throughout. So it's creating a look that will just grab them and their hearts pound and they want to be there and live there and buy that home. And it works.
If your customer has a limited budget and wants to remodel their kitchen, where do you start with them? What are those things that get a lot of pop for not as much dollar?
Yeah, bang for the buck in a kitchen is always difficult. There are certain essential elements that these days much more accessible. For instance, if you can convince them to buy a counter depth fridge as opposed to an overly deep fridge, that gives you much more leeway in terms of designing your cabinetry and getting that nice, clean, contemporary look. So that's step number one. And there's an awful lot on the market now that are not actually going to break the bank. Be consistent with those appliances. Make them work, but they don't have to be top of the line. And then go from there. Lighting. Over the islands, choose lighting that is perhaps pendants that you wouldn't normally see in a kitchen. You can take a lighting fixture that is oversized, that defines, maybe it's an industrial-looking lighting in a very ordinary, neutral kitchen, and suddenly it gives it personality. That's not expensive to do, assuming that your electrical is in the right place. And electrical is one of the places that I do spend money when people are on a budget, because it's worth it, because you can create work zones and you can create ambiance, again, in this large area of a kitchen, and especially when it's open concept. So you have your task lighting under counter, if you have your pendants all on dimmers, you have, of course, pot lights as well. You have created a kitchen now that you can tone down, and it becomes a thing of beauty when you're sitting at your dining room table, for example. It becomes a kind of sexy place to have a glass of wine with your partner. Or it just becomes a workspace, place where the kids hang out. So lighting is key. That's one place that you can spend initially the money to get the wiring in, the receptacles, and create those zones. But the light fixtures don't actually have to break the bank, and they're key to defining it. And moving on from there, it's all about countertops and backsplashes. It really is. And again, if you can create the look without having to use the most expensive materials, it's available. A subway tile with a beautiful countertop looks stunning. It's timeless, it's simple, it's elegant, and it's giving you exactly what you need in terms of function and a great look.
How about the countertop materials that are like a laminate countertop material?
Well, that's why we're here today, to talk about VT dimensions. And the fact is, I know how hard it is to educate the customer that when they hear the word laminate, they don't go running and saying, oh my God, no, I want granite. At any cost, I need to have granite because laminate won't work for me. And I know that when laminate floors, for example, came in, I had the same reaction until they actually saw the new laminate floors. And that goes for the countertops. They're exceptional. They're exceptional. And in my opinion, it shouldn't be such a hard sell, especially when they actually see, as you have here, the edge details that are available, the definition of the material. The Constantine over there looks as beautiful and more beautiful than an inexpensive Carrera that comes out of India or somewhere, or China, and that will chip and crack. You don't have the upkeep. You've got all the benefits of a granite, but you don't have the cost. So I am genuinely a huge fan of laminates as long as we have what we have here with VT, these wonderful edge details, the fact that it's wrapped, I don't see a seam along the top, the fact that I know I can have a huge length and those seams will disappear. I can do a very big island with this material. I have an edge detail that is modern or more traditional or transitional, great choices. It's a fantastic, fantastic choice, but it takes education. And I think it's important for the client to be able to see the product, see it with a cabinet, and understand that they have to do what I have to do, which is go up and actually touch it to say, honestly, really? And that's when you realize that it's not the natural material, it's that good. I love it, truly.
All right, so you've had some really challenging customers that we've seen on your TV show, highly challenging. So out of all of those, what's one of your biggest design success stories?
Design success stories on the show? Mm-hmm. Oh boy, there have been so many. No, so many of both. Crazy homeowners who then decide to love it after all. You know, one of the biggest successes is when you can please both, and everybody goes through this when you're a designer. The husband wants X and the wife wants Y, even when they both want to stay in the home. It's very rare that they both agree on one style. And we had a couple where the wife was absolutely convinced that she had to have walls down that really couldn't come down for her budget. She had to have an absolutely astounding kitchen, and it had to be modern and sleek, and the husband hated that idea. And we managed to bring those two things together, work within the space that we were given. The wall did not come down, but the wall became a part of the kitchen simply by paneling it and making it feel as though it was part of the whole kitchen. And we blended those two. We gave her a very modern sink and faucet. We gave him a little OG edge on the countertops, which softened that sort of modern look. And they loved it. So it's all about listening to what they want and trying to get into their heads and find that little key that will make them both go, yes. And they are crazy, so it's not that easy, trust me.
So what are the top kitchen remodel ideas to avoid? Is there anything out there that we should just walk away from?
You know, there's two things. I was talking about the appliances earlier. One of the biggest mistakes an awful lot of clients make is to go out and buy their appliances first. Usually it's the man. I mean, they fall in love with fridges. What is it with you guys? I mean, there's a great big slab of stainless steel and with lights and LED and things and drawers and blah, blah, and you decide, yes, I have to have that. And then the kitchen design usually is going to suffer because you now have to design around this massive stove or fridge that's already been purchased. And that's a huge mistake I see all the time. And the other thing I still see is people who are on a budget deciding that they're going to tile a countertop. They can't afford granite, they don't understand the value of a laminate, and they will tile a countertop. Terrible mistake. Terrible. So those are the two that I've seen.
Okay. How do you convince homeowners that sometimes they're better off having it professionally installed and trying instead to do it themselves? The DIY horror stories.
The DIY, well, you know, I generally sort of ask them if they would like me to perform open heart surgery on them, and I'm not a doctor, and generally that would be a bad idea. So they might want to trust the professionals. And if that fails, all I have to do is say, can I see your latest DIY little project? And that pretty much clinches it, because it's usually terrible. So convincing them that the money that they're going to spend is not that much more than, or it certainly balances out with their wife's horror at their DIY little attempts. They're choosing a material that does have a cost to it no matter what, and without professional installation, they're simply not going to get the value out of it. They're not going to get the long-term value. It's really not that hard ultimately to convince them that this is something they need to do. And I've never had a client tell me that they regret spending the money getting a professional installation. The lucky thing is that I always had the trust of my clients. I'm an incredibly practical designer. I don't let, you know, my design dreams override the practical issues that families have, especially with kitchens and bathrooms. So I have a very good connection with my clients, and through the show, I think that's a through line as well. And I have their trust. And if I have their trust, I need to know that I can I can suggest products, and if installation comes along with that, plus the installation, that I can put my trust in and extend that to the client. And that's key. And they trust me to tell them this is a company that will follow up. After sales is 100%, and they're in.
Well, obviously, you have a very interesting job. So what are some of the best things about being the host of Love It or List It, besides flying late at night?
Gosh, where to start? You know, one of the surprises to me about this show is it's become a family show. I hear all the time about families sitting down with their children, husbands and wives and children of varying age, often from, teens all the way down to very young children, students who watch it in the dorms. And I find that very gratifying, because there is very little these days that brings families together. I think everything is actually pushing them apart. Technology, sitting in their bedrooms, fooling around on their laptops, on their iPads. It's become a real struggle to bring a family together. And our show brings kids together, and they talk. They actually talk about the show. And I had somebody come up to me at one of the HGTV events saying that this is the one show he allows his children to stay up for, because it teaches them the value of trust, good design, and conflict resolution, which I thought was funny. I think that's why Hillary Clinton likes the show.
Well, speaking of conflict resolution, we know there are some scenes, obviously, that don't always show up. It's a 30-minute show and things get cut. So talk to us about what gets cut, and typically, how do you film that show? What's that time process?
Oh, okay. Well, so let's start with the time process. I'm on camera for 6 days of every show. The start to finish construction is 3 weeks, which is ridiculous, but that's what we do. We usually have 3 going at the same time, so that we are moving our tradespeople from one project to another, if everything works out, which it doesn't always, but that's the plan. The planning before is in terms of, I have a layout, I know what I want to do. I have a sense of the design aesthetic that I want to be in there, color palettes, all of those are already chosen. Then we go in, and of course we tear it apart, and we don't know for sure what we're going to find, and that's the meat of the show. What you don't see? Well, I do lose it sometimes with the crazy homeowners, I have to be honest. I do. I'm there 6 days a week. It's freezing cold half the time, no heat, no running water. It's dusty, it's filthy, and I'm killing myself to try and make this house work. And they're beating me up for the fact that I've found something. And guess what? They don't want to give me more money, so you've seen the show and how that works. And I've lost it. I have. It's true. I did actually lose it just the other day, and I finally said to this man, for God, you have a horrible little house. It's hideous, it's horrible, it's ugly, it's disgusting. I'm trying to fix it for you. What is your problem? You will never see that. Snip, snip, gone. So, yeah, it happens.
All right, well, we have a few more questions up here, but we actually have 10 more minutes. So does anybody have cards with questions on them? We'll collect those. Oh, we do have a few. So while we're collecting those, Hillary, what kitchen design elements provide the best resale value? Like, I want to add value to my home. Tell me my top few things.
Well, so let me say, first of all, when you're trying to get your house ready to sell, your clients are trying to get your house ready to sell. I mean, there's the obvious things, declutter, get the towels off the bathroom floor, make the beds look crispy and inviting. And then you're going to, of course, go to your kitchen, because we know kitchens and baths sell houses. The key is to, I think as we sort of hit upon at the beginning of this, you have to try and make it look as seamless as possible. The worst thing is to suddenly do a kitchen remodel and it has nothing to do with the rest of your house. So if your house is an older home, and it clearly is an older home, you're not going to completely remodel, you need to try and bring that aesthetic into a kitchen remodel. And that could be as simple as refacing your doors. It could be as simple as putting on a new backsplash if your countertops are nice, or redo your countertops. Nothing worse than scuzzy, kind of grimy looking countertops. Freshen those up, put on a new backsplash, put on some new hardware onto existing doors, and you're already a long way to doing a huge update ready for resale. That's the key, to have impact when they walk in. Are you going to ask these to me, for me? Go on, just surprise me.
All right, we'll see if I can read everybody's writing here. In an open room design that combines kitchen, dining room, and living room, how do you unify flow as well as show separation?
Okay, and that is a challenge with open concept. I don't know, who asked that question? Mr. Brooklyn. Okay, so, depending on the scale of the room, it's a challenge, there's no question. I do believe that lighting is one of them, which I hit on earlier. So that when your kitchen is in use, and even when it's not in use, it actually has the lighting that's ambient that will actually flow with the rest of the rooms. So you need to be able to, you can define your dining room obviously with a pendant, as long as it doesn't actually mess up with your sight lines. It should flow very nicely, so you've still got nice flow for and circulation for people to walk. It's a difficult, because it's such a general question. The placement of your sofas, you need everything to relate to each other. So you could do your sofa, for example, depending on where your windows are, with its back to the kitchen, but you would have to have chairs as well, so you've got your seating area, so you're also looking towards the kitchen. And then get a color scheme on your walls that is cohesive, probably one color all the way through. And maybe there is just one element in that kitchen that will tie everything together. It could be a light fixture, it could be your choice of backsplash, countertop, but there has to be something cohesive. If you used a strong color, or if you use, for instance, the Constantine, which is one of the new collection, which is that gray-white Carrera look, then perhaps you want to bring gray into your decor, and that starts to tie the whole room together. But they're defined by the lighting is one of the first things that I would hit on, and then the placement, so that you have a seating area, an eating area, but you don't ever block the circulation so that you can actually move around.
All right, well, we've all seen where you've been surprised in many of your shows because there are structural issues. Are those always surprise factors, or do you have any indication walking into a home that you might run into a whole nest of issues?
Well, by now I'd be a complete idiot if I hadn't figured some of this out. And I'm not a complete idiot. So, and even before the show, I have a pretty good idea of the way my floor joists are running, and therefore where my structural walls probably are. With older homes, here's the problem with what I'm working with. I'm working with very old homes, a lot of the time in Toronto, that were built well over 100 years ago when there was no real building code. So yes, I know that's a structural wall. What I don't know is, it doesn't line up with anything in the basement. It should be lining up, it doesn't. So I know it's structural. I have a sense of what I have to do to take it down, and probably I have to put in my beam. I'm expecting it to be able to sit on structure in the basement, but it doesn't necessarily. That creates a whole new ball of wax. Or my floor joists run this way exactly as I expect, and then they suddenly run this way for no good reason. And so that's really the issue with these older homes. It's much easier in a new build because we know that there are building codes that they have to adhere to. So I'm pretty clear on what I have to do there. So it's a surprise. It is a surprise. I mean, we know we're going to run into surprises because that's part of the show. And sometimes they're big surprises. Sometimes there are a lot of little surprises. But they're there.
All right, well, somebody wanted you to expand a little bit on how you work with crazy customers, since apparently you're not the only one that has crazy customers. How do you get their expectations in line?
They're impossible, some of these customers. I mean, they really are insane. They're entitled. There are too many design shows on television. They think they know more than they know. They leaf through the magazines and just decide, I want that. And they have very little concept of the realities. And it really is, first of all, I think you have to be very firm. And, if this is the budget, give me your budget, give me your wishes, exactly like the show. give me a few photographs of what it is that you're aiming for. And now let's be realistic and prioritize. And once we prioritize, we will realize, customer, that you can't have everything. And you certainly can't have everything at a certain level. And the priorities start to become very, very clear. The things that can go by the wayside, or the things that can be finessed. The floors could be refinished. The upholstery can be renewed. The cabinetry could be refaced. Where are the areas that we absolutely have to spend the money that you've got to give you what you need? And these will be prioritized, and we're sticking with that, unless you want to up the budget, which is always the question. So it's a question of just being really, really firm. And when they get out of line, I find that drinking works, but when that's not appropriate, or you just can't sneak it without them noticing, it really is time to just sort of, you just literally call time and say, okay, we're all getting overheated here now. We're going to revisit this tomorrow. I mean, it really, or in an hour, whatever it takes. So there is a decompression time for everybody. And sometimes I do find that it helps me as well, because I get caught up in that as much as anything else, and frustrated, and that's not helpful either. So to just have that little time, you go in, have a chat and a cup of tea, and I'll do the same thing, and let's revisit this. I might have come up with a solution that I didn't have in that moment to work what they want within their budget, and they may have come up with, honestly, do we really need that so badly? So the key is when it starts to get to that little bubbly point is, I think, to just time out.
Okay, this question is, how long have you worked with the contractors that you've worked with on the show? Is it
Since day one. Day one, same contractors, Eddie and Fergus. And I depend on them because, as I said, we finish these houses in 3 weeks. And they are magicians. And they have trades that are so dependable, which is key. We all know that. We have people like, oh gosh, sorry, that was almost a disaster. Like you. Because the key for us is to have our suppliers and our tradespeople that we can depend on, suppliers that we know will come in, and they will come and service the product a year down the line, or whatever it takes to keep them happy, that they will also come in and give us what we need on time, on budget, and to the standards that we need. And without that, it just simply wouldn't be possible.
Okay, and our last question somebody had, and we talked about this earlier, is why Canada? Why are all the HGTV shows filmed in Canada?
I don't know. It's so cold and disgusting for 6 months of the year. The rest of the year we're being eaten alive by mosquitoes and black flies, and somehow we battle through. I think what we've managed to do is bring in a product that, in terms of the design and what you see on screen, you get good production values up there. Our television crews are phenomenal. We work extraordinarily long hours. We are not as expensive as shooting a show down here. And we are absolutely ruthless in terms of this is the level at which we have to do it, and we refuse to go down there. So I think that consistency, our price point, and just that we're fabulous, that sort of all pulls together. I think that our homeowners are kind of interesting too. They let loose. I mean, I don't know, would you feel that someone's here from Kentucky, for example, I seem to recall. Would a Kentucky couple be as willing to rail on me as you see on the show? What would you say? No? Yes? Yes? Well, I've got to get down there then. Do battle with Kentucky. I don't truly know. It's a combination of things, and somehow we've hit it. It's great. We're looking forward to coming down to the States and start shooting, though, which we're planning to do next year. So that'll be fun. Sunshine. I want to do it during the winter. That's my plan.
All right, well, we appreciate you, Hillary, answering all our questions. Tricia, you're going to give us a little bit of information.
We've got a lot of our sales territory managers here, and they can answer any questions about our products that we've got displayed over to the right. I just wanted to thank you again for coming, and enjoy the rest of your KBIS or IBS show. And finally, I want to thank Hillary for all of her information on how to get the most out of your kitchen and bath remodel, and it's really been a pleasure to hear from her today and to get her insight. So let's give Hillary a round of applause. And be sure to check out our new capture collection that's launching today. So, thanks.
Been a pleasure. Thank you.
So, I like to get them laughing. So, you could do one of the questions.
You're on. Yeah.
I would like to
Do you want to? Oh, that's right. And yes.
All righty, we're ready to get started. If everyone can gather around. Hi, I'm Tricia Schmidt with VT Industries, and I just wanted to welcome you all and thank you for coming to tonight's event. As many of you know, VT has been helping people get the most out of their kitchen and bath remodel for almost 60 years. We're here tonight to introduce our capture collection and to hear from Hillary, and we're really excited to have everyone here. We want to do a few introductions and then thank a few people, and then we'll hear from Hillary. I would first like to thank her for coming tonight. We're really excited about the event. We've had tremendous excitement about the event over the last few weeks, and we've had to expand the room size to accommodate everyone, and we're just really happy to see everyone here. Hillary does much more than interior design on HGTV's Love It or List It. She was the first designer to stage properties for sale and really is an expert in ambiance and home remodeling. Her understanding of home design and improvement is just bar none, and she is able to use all different types of materials to do her work, and she's proven to be a master in the art of kitchen and bath remodels and really does an outstanding job. We've got Nancy here. She's with Noble, and she's going to be doing the moderating for our discussion today. We're really excited to have her here, so thank you, Nancy, for coming out tonight. And last but not least, I'd like to just thank everyone for coming. We're so excited, and we loved all the questions that you submitted, and we're ready to get started. So I'll hand it over to Nancy.
So how this is going to work is we have a lot of questions that we've actually got from you when you registered. So we took the top questions that everybody was really interested in asking Hillary, and we've compiled those. So we're going to start with that. There are some white cards on your tables. There's a few pens. Good luck. If you have some additional questions that you think of during the session, please write it down. If we have time at the end, we'll certainly collect those. The VT people are all in gray, so hopefully you've met them, and we'll collect your questions. So we've had a really busy couple of days, Hillary. All of these folks here along with us, we saw some really interesting thing at KBIS and IBS. So tell us, what is your perspective on the design trends for kitchen and bath for this year? What's really hot?
Well, what I've seen is it's funny how trends start from a certain point, and I think one of the driving forces to the new trends that I've seen is a desire to bring back warm metals into the design of today. It's an odd sort of looking backwards, but it still has the edge of today. I'm seeing a lot of brushed gold and blackened metals and brass, but the profiles are still very modern. It's it's something I personally think is a really nice aesthetic when we've just had nothing but polished nickel, it seems like, for a very, very long time. And there's nothing wrong with that, but we all like to move on now and then. And I think as a result of that, the kitchen design aesthetic has had to adapt to that. And so, again, it's become very much monochromatic almost. You know, a lot of blacks and off-blacks and grays along with whites and off-whites to give a very neutral background to these beautiful new metals. And then the backsplash and the countertop, as is so often the case, actually making the big design statement within it. So nothing has really changed that much, except the color palette has become quite muted. That's what I'm noticing. And I'm even seeing some raised panels coming back. You know, the shaker door has had its day, nothing wrong with it. It's a great solution to that. I'm not sure if I want to go modern or not. It works, but I'm starting to see more interesting profiles in many things, cabinetry being one of them.
What about color? What about if you want a pop-up color? What do you see are the hot colors?
Well, you know, Radiant Orchid, I love Pantone's predictions. You know, he predicts these colors that are really difficult to work with. I mean, Radiant Orchid. I don't know where I'm going to pop Radiant Orchid in the average home. Do you? I mean, it's a struggle to convince somebody they really need to have this in their homes. So I think, like a lot of designers, we've taken that lead, and it has led us to a lot of very interesting blues. A lot of blue with that sort of, you know, mauvey undertone, a lot of that denim blue. I'm seeing it on the runway, and I'm seeing it a lot in homes. And I think that's a nice way of taking a color that is going to seep into everyone's consciousness, whether we like it or not. We know Pantone, you know, the reach of Pantone's predictions seems to be endless. So I think blues are the way that we're just sort of sneaking that in. I'm not convinced we're going to see a lot of actual Radiant Orchid in our homes. Not in my homes, anyway.
So we have a lot of customers that want to redo their kitchens, and they come to us and they want stainless steel appliances and granite and great flooring and great cabinetry. How do we achieve all of that, what they want, without breaking the bank?
Well, interesting you should ask me that. You know what, I just think the rules don't change much. You know, give me a budget and give me your list of priorities, and, you know, perhaps rip out a few pages from a design magazine that you like to give me some direction, and then we're going to prioritize. And it's going to be very interesting to see how, when the reality of how far your dollar can stretch with what you want, how that's going to work. And my job is to guide the clients as to where I think you need to spend and where I think that you can cut back, or where you can do an interim design and you can ramp it up maybe 2-3 years down the line so that you can get the main infrastructure in. And certainly I would encourage them to, you know, maybe back off on the cabinetry, go paint grade. You don't actually have to have a solid wood and a wood grain necessarily. You can get a wonderful look with paint grade using interesting colors. I've done it on the show a lot, using grays and earth tones and maybe contrast with the island color. And then you can start to spend more perhaps on your backsplash, which is a big design statement. But because the actual square footage of the backsplash is relatively small, it's not going to break the bank. And then, of course, your countertops. So I like to sort of design from the floor up, and I usually start with, if it's a smaller house, I need to continue the flow. So if it's hardwood, I'd like to continue that through that set, and then work my way up from there so that the costs are spent in the function, first and foremost, and then we deal with the look. And if it's going to be paint grade, that's okay. Or if it's going to be spent on lighting, for instance, which I think is desperately important to make a kitchen not only look fabulous, but create zones, especially today when we're dealing with open concept and the kitchen is right there in your face, in the middle of whatever is pre-existing in the client's home. And we have to somehow upgrade that kitchen without it looking like this brand new area of the house that's plonked into existing. So lighting is a great way of doing that. Excuse me. You can create zones within your kitchen so that it becomes, you know, a nice backdrop to the rest of the floor area. Obviously your task lighting is key. Ramp up the lights. I mean, it's just a way of integrating that kitchen into the entire framework of the home, making it feel as one, although it's all brand new. And lighting is ultimately not that expensive. It's perhaps getting the wiring in is a bit of a cost, but you can pull back on the cost of the actual fixtures and maybe ramp that up down the line.
So for some of our customers who have a really limited budget but want to make a big difference in their kitchen, are there a few things beyond lighting that they can do to make a difference?
Yes, I mean, I think one of the things that lets kitchens down, and we're here to talk about, you know, countertop material, and I think that it's a very valid element and a very important element. I mean, there's nothing worse than walking into a kitchen and you see this sort of scuzzy, messed up, scratched, gross countertop. It's disgusting, and it just is. So, you know, and I don't care if it's granite. If it's old, chipped, and disgusting, it just should be replaced. So I would start with the countertop, and that's where you can spend, and you can then paint out your cabinetry, maybe put on new hardware, maybe put on a very simple, inexpensive subway tile backsplash, and you've got an upgrade that actually isn't going to break the bank if you use one of the laminates that we're here to talk about today, which I happen to think are fantastic. Truly, I wouldn't be here otherwise.
So what do you think about some of the granites on the market? Obviously, there's a lot of cheaper granite options now versus some of the high-def laminates.
You know, that's a great question because, yes, the desire to have granite is overwhelming, and you know, there's a resistance to laminate. The moment you talk about laminate to a client, on the whole, there's a feeling that they are suddenly, you know, downgrading their kitchen upgrade. And in fact, that isn't the case. A cheaper imported granite, I think we've all seen what can happen there where there's too much fill and they start cracking and popping and falling apart and chipping, not to mention, you know, a 10 to 12 week lead time very often in actually getting the templates done and the installation done. Whereas with a product like yours and a high def laminate, especially now that you've got all these edges on, it's dependable. It has all the same function as granite. It looks astounding. I mean, in my opinion, Constantine, that's one of your new products in the new collection. You'd have to really go up to it to be sure that it actually is a laminate. You don't know what it is. It's a bit like the floors that are coming out now that are so spectacular in laminates. You really actually have to go and touch to figure out that it's not the real thing. So if I had a choice between a cheap imported granite and a high-def laminate such as VT, I would go with the laminate every day.
How important is the detail in the edge to you when you're designing a kitchen on your countertops?
Oh, it's huge because you can really, you can really define your design with that edge. I mean, we've all used that pencil edge, that straight pencil edge. It's fabulous. It's a way of making that transitional kitchen look utterly timeless. You're not locking into a traditional, you're not actually going into the skinny edge for, high edgy modern. It's elegant, it looks rich, and to have a choice of edges is essential. If I want to, as I was talking about earlier, with the paneled cabinetry that is coming back in, go for an OG. Maybe it's not a full-on OG, maybe it's a slightly softer OG. To have those choices is essential because it really does make a big defining statement in terms of your kitchen.
What kitchen design elements provide the best resale for you?
For me, I think the most important thing to do is consider your kitchen as a whole when you're designing for resale, which I've done a lot. I used to flip houses for many, many years. And you want to have the full-on impact the minute you walk in. Your people walk in, your potential buyers walk in. you also have a budget, because if you put too much in, you're not going to get it back out. So you have to be very careful where to spend your money. Again, the flooring is essential. There's no question. That is one of the biggest square foot areas that the eye is going to see as you walk in. That will define your kitchen. I think, as I said earlier, I think that you can ease up on the cabinetry, again, going with paint grade and going with fabulous hardware, putting interesting pendants over the island if you're doing an island. And then you have to have the impact of great countertops, because again, that's the other single largest area of your kitchen other than your cabinetry that you're going to see at eye level. And if you can get the impact of your countertops that is counterbalanced by the simplicity of your cabinetry, where you have not had to spend a lot of money, and then put in a wonderful backsplash, you have a kitchen that people are going to react to. It's going to look fabulous. And again, the materials that we have tonight are a great solution to that, because you do not want to have to spend an enormous amount of money on expensive appliances and on, good grade granite, because you may or may not ever get that money back when you're reselling your house. Let them put that in when they buy it if they want to.
So for those of us who watch you often, we know that you deal with a lot of drama on your show. There's a lot of people that get very excited. How do you deal with clients, and how do you get them to be reasonable given the situation and the budget?
Okay. Well, let's just start with the fact that sometimes what it takes is actually a timeout. You don't necessarily see that. And it's actually, okay, we have to have a timeout, because I have to cool down, and you certainly have to cool down. And then there are the times when actually they get under my skin. They just do sometimes. And there was, actually just recently, there was one where he just would not stop going at me. And I lost it. And I said, I don't understand. I mean, you have this disgusting, horrible, nasty little house. It's smelly, it's filthy, it's horrible, it's ugly, and I'm trying to help you. What is wrong with you? And you will never see that. The editors go snip, snip, and I look like a saint, which I am not. So, but most of the time, to be fair, these people have, they have given us a lot of money to do their renovations, and they've left their house, and the next time they come and see it, I've ripped it apart, on top of which I'm giving them bad news, and there's a camera in their face. So it is, I do have a degree of forgiveness for these people. So on the whole, I can take it, but not always.
So what do you do when you have a customer who is still stuck in the 80s decade? How do you get them forward?
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm sure people must have come across that when they still say, no, I have to have, a raised panel oak. It's the only thing that I want, and I want everything in orange, and oh dear. So, it's always that tricky line where our job is to guide them to open up their minds to something new without being confrontational and too bossy, which, by the way, I tend to be. Just because you're hiring me and you're paying me, and in theory that's because you trust me, so you might want to actually listen to what I have to say, which doesn't always work. So the idea is just to try and guide them, show them photographs, explain how they can have the same sense of their comfort area, but we need to sort of move into the 21st century. And generally they'll go along with the ride. They will. I mean, it's tiptoeing to a degree, but I think you have to be pretty firm. You just do. And just say, because I'm right and you're wrong. That's it.
So how do you deal with budget overruns? What happens?
Oh, budget overruns. Well, they cry, I cry. We drink. And then we try and figure it out. And it's, It's not always inevitable, but going in, I've always asked to get that contingency going. That is a nice, healthy one that usually will cover the issue, but doesn't always. And sometimes it does mean that we have to relook at that original list of priorities. We just do. And very often that is backing up on the scope. Perhaps we can back off a little bit on the ambition to own, the refrigerator that, you need to take a mortgage out to own. It's hard. It just is. There's just no way around it. It means we usually have to cut something out. That's the way it goes. But nothing important. We try and say, okay, the upholstery can wait. You can do that down the line. There are so many elements that can be done down the line, and let's now start putting this into a phase 1, 2, and 3, and deal with the important infrastructure and a kitchen, bathroom, obviously wiring, plumbing, all of those other things simply you can't back up on.
Tell us about one of the most challenging things you've encountered during a remodel.
Gosh, where to begin? Oh, all right. Okay, I'll tell you a funny one I had. I have an older couple who have moved from a very large, sort of a manse, to a pretty large townhouse. And it was a big renovation. It was almost $1 million renovation. And I was having a grand old time, and I had finally was getting to, the finicky, lovely bits of finishings. And I brought in the design board, and I had my carpeting on it. And it was all very elegant in ivories and those lovely soft earth tones. And she said, oh, I'm sorry, hold on. And she scurried off, and she came back with one of those little Ziploc bags. And it had cat food in it, the dry cat food. And she said, you have to match it to this. She has cats. In fact, they throw up every so often. So we have to match it to the cat food. And I did. That's about the weirdest one so far.
It would be hard to top that one.
Yeah, it's kind of gross, by the way. Sorry about that.
So besides the Catwoman,
Yeah.
Can you tell us about another design success?
Well, one of the hard things is, and I'm sure everybody here has encountered it, is when you have a couple and you become a marriage, counselor along the way when you're working with them. And, he loves modern and she loves traditional, whichever way that goes. And somehow, it's very easy to say, happy wife, easy life. We understand that, write out the check and do what she wants. But I don't find that satisfying. It doesn't feel right to me, and I want to try and please them both. And it's a challenge. And I come across that a lot. For example, I would give her an apron front sink in her kitchen, and I will give him a very sleek glass backsplash. And I will give her a countertop that has some sort of veining going on. It's not a stark Caesar stone or quartz. It actually has got either the look of or actually is a nice natural material. I will give him that very hard edge and maybe a hard finish on the cabinetry. And we end up with a kitchen that both of them actually really like. So I like to work that way, and they're both happy. There's a little bit of a compromise on both sides, and the marriage stays intact, and I get paid, and it's all good.
So obviously you have a 30-minute show, and we know that it doesn't all happen in 30 minutes. So talk to us, because you deal with time restraints all the time. How do you deal with that, and then what is the process of the show? How does that timing really work?
Okay, so for each episode, I'm on camera for 6 days. And our renovations are usually, from start to finish, 3 weeks, which is, considering what we do, pretty mind-boggling. So we have an extraordinary crew. You've seen them. They've been with us since day one. Anyone who's watched the show knows who Eddie is, I think. It's kind of hot. And then there's, just, by the way. And then there's Fergus, who in his own way is, I suppose, if you like that sort of thing. And then, no, he's lovely. big, lovely guys. And they are, they are people who know exactly what they have to do, and they both have a crew that they've worked with forever, and these extraordinary tradespeople. So we usually have 3 houses going at the same time, and when things go well, that means that we can move our tradespeople from one to the next and keep going, and that's how we manage to get them done in 3 weeks. Obviously, there's some pre-planning. I've seen the house. I've got a sense of what I'm in for. I know what I need to do to make them love it. I've got a design aesthetic going. I've got colors planned. I've already selected what I think is going to work for flooring, et cetera, all of those hard elements. What I don't know for sure is my structure. I mean, I can pretty much guess where a structural wall is, but we're dealing with 100-year-old homes. Or 100-year-plus homes when there weren't building codes the way there are today. So very often, I'll pretty much guess correctly usually that my floor joists are going this way, so there's my supporting wall. But what I don't know is, when that wall has to be removed, that there is not a wall in the basement that's actually going to support it. Could be off by a foot here, or enough so that I've suddenly got a massive structure issue. Or, yes, the joists are all going this way until they suddenly change, and now they're going this way. So that's what I don't know, and that's what we run into on the show, and that's, of course, what makes the show fun.
And how do you deal with that? I mean, obviously, a lot of times you're the bearer of bad news, and you have to cut some things. So how do you deal with customers' disappointments?
It always seems so reasonable when I tell them, this is what we found. And yet, somehow, I have failed them by finding this. The fact that when this house was built, that wall was actually meant to stay there. It wasn't actually meant to come down. And there are issues with it. And I try and forewarn them to some degree, but there really is no easy way. I'm just pretty direct. I think there's no way to sugarcoat it. It's this, it's going to cost that, and guess what? Whatever it is you wanted, something has got to go. And again, I try and prioritize those based on, for the show, it's different from what we encounter with our private clients. For the show, I know that I need to get them to love it. So I've got to decide on my priorities that I know they're going to want no matter what. And it's usually a kitchen or a bathroom. If I can hold on to those, then I'm usually in good shape.
Are there any really bad ideas when it comes to kitchen remodel? Anything that you should just avoid?
Oh, yeah. But let's see. Okay, I'll tell you something. Why is it that men... I'm sorry, guys, but seriously. Why is it that men love humongous fridges that all they do is keep beer in most of the time anyway? Exactly. And these massive stoves that they never usually cook on anyway, just because it's machinery and it's a lot of metal and they love them. So I very often have a client where they've already committed to a massive appliance, and then A, they've spent a fortune, and B, I now have to compromise on a kitchen layout, or they will have to end up with a compromised layout to accommodate these huge pieces of appliances. So that's a big mistake. And the other huge mistake that I see, that I think is shocking that it's still out there, is people who have decided to tile their countertops. And they still do. And it's the most terrible idea that anybody could possibly think of, and yet there they are. So those would be the two that stand out for me.
All right, well, you probably have one of the more interesting jobs of anybody being the host of HGTV, Love It or List It. So tell us a little bit about the most favorite thing of that job. And it's not flying in at 2 a.m. in the morning like you just did for us.
One of the things that I hear all the time is that families watch our show. And that husbands and wives and children ranging all the way from, 8, 6 sometimes, all the way up to 16, 21. I hear from students who watch us, in their poor room while they're sitting there studying and being nervous about exams. And that means a lot. I think it's a wonderful thing that we have a show that brings families together. We're living in an age when there's less and less of that. The more high-tech we get, the more everybody is, with their face in their laptop or their iPad, and the connection is hard to create. And our show seems to have done that, and that's incredibly fulfilling. I love that.
So we have just a couple of questions left. I want to make sure if you guys have any questions that you would like answered before our event ends, if you can hand them or raise your hand and we'll collect them. We have a few more minutes. Anybody, if you have a card, write it on the card and we'll collect them. So Hillary, a couple more questions. There's a lot of open kitchen space, obviously, today, open format. How do you deal best with this?
Open concept, yeah. I mean, that it's an upside and a downside. It's a huge challenge, as any designer knows. Number one, where are you going to put all your cabinetry? You don't have a wall anymore. And number two, you have to integrate your new kitchen in with whatever is going on with the client. So I tend to try and give my wall color a nice cohesive color throughout, but I like to layer. So for example, if start with countertops again, that's one of our biggest areas in the kitchen. So let's go back to one of my favorite materials that you have in your new collection, which is the Constantine, which is like the Carrera. That's the white and the gray. That is front and forward. I would probably assume that my dining room is going to follow somewhere around there, or dining area. I could do a nice buffet or a hutch, and I could continue that countertop material on that. It'll look as though it's part of the dining room. It defines it as a dining room. It can be an extension of that kitchen, and certainly in terms of design, that starts to pull that together. And then start working in those grays. Maybe it's a soft gray on the sofa, or if there's an existing color, maybe I bring a harder gray in, just with accessories, and try and create those zones with lighting is one of the elements, floor lamps and table lamps in the sitting area, and rugs. But you try and get a through line, and if I were using that material, I would probably be working with varying layering of levels of gray.
Will you be in the U.S. ever filming your show?
Yes, we will. We're working on that right now. So I'm very much looking forward to that. I'm not sure where, East Coast, West Coast, hoping for the West Coast so much. But yeah, we should be here starting either at the end of this year or the beginning of next. So stay tuned.
Are you ever disappointed when they wait to list?
Yes. Definitely. Although I have to say there are times when I think they should list it and they love it. I mean, there are times when I simply can't expand the size of the house and they still decide to love it. I think that is really weird because I actually probably wouldn't have done that. But when I've killed myself and they list it, it's like, oh, it's hard. But there you go. We wouldn't have a show otherwise. We'd be love it or love it. Or love it or love it and love it and love it.
Does HGTV match client contributions to the money?
Yes. In fact, when we started the show, and you're a little bit behind the shows here in the States that we've actually shot. So we're on our 6th year of doing this show, and I think you're only seeing the 3rd season right now. And in our earlier shows, our budgets were very, very low, and I think unrealistically low. And I had an issue with that because it wasn't, I thought, it wasn't fair to the viewer, and it wasn't fair to the clients, and it was killing my business because people thought I could work these absolute miracles. And that was it. They were basically, if we got something for nothing, we were passing it along for nothing. And that has since changed, and we have brought our budgets up to being realistic. So the client gives us what we need to do this job at retail cost. So it's a real budget, absolutely. Yeah, I agree, yeah. It's doing us all a disservice, it really is otherwise, because they have expectations that it's virtually impossible to meet.
Why do the homeowners give you such a tight remodel budget when they are willing to significantly upgrade the new house budget?
Beats the hell out of me. I do not know. I suppose the difference is they're borrowing money for their house. I mean, they're going to get a mortgage. It's a payout. It's not as hard as actually coming up with, cold hard cash. So that's pretty much the reason, I think.
All right, and for our last question, do you operate a business beyond the show?
Yes, I do. I have my own business and have had for many, many years where I design and build, and that's what I love to do. And I fully intend to keep doing it. Yeah.
Again, I'd like to thank you all for coming tonight and thank Hillary for a great day, and we're really excited. We've got some Wilson Art and Formica products out there. We can do anything, any edge profile with any of our partners' laminate, and then we also have our 5 new colors, so I'd say check it out. Thanks for coming.
It was a pleasure. Thank you. Nice to meet you all.